Here's how to save seed from the cucurbita family. They include things like your summer squash, courgettes and pumpkins. Within this family, there are 4 distinct species that are grown commonly for their edible fruits, which do not intercross with each other. However, it can be quite difficult to tell the different species apart, and so here is a surefire way of making sure your pumpkins, summer squashes and courgettes do not intercross with each other. The reason that the cucurbits cross so readily is that they produce their reproductive organs on 2 separate flowers which are very open, and they're insect pollinated, meaning that pollen can transfer from one flower to another flower very easily. So to stop that happening, what we do is we need to identify the pollen producing flower and the fruit producing flower. So here is the pollen producing flower that we can see is borne on a long stalk. I'm just going to take some brightly coloured string and tie it shut. And then we're going to tie closed this fruit producing flower with a fruit at its base. So you want to tie up a number of pollen producing, as many as you can basically, of pollen producing flowers, because the pollen will mature at different rates and we want that pollen to match the maturity of the fruit producing flower. The time that you want to tie up the flowers is when they're just about to reach maturity, but they haven't quite opened yet. So they've got a slightly yellow hue to them. They're not green and tight, but they're not open yet either. So we tie them up one day, the next day we check on them. If the flower looks like it's kind of bursting and yellow and vibrant and about to pop, that's when we take the string off. So we've tied them up, we've waited till overnight, and the flowers are popping. They're just, you can see they're really blooming. So we're going to pick the pollen producing flower, peel off the petals of the pollen producing flower to reveal the pollen, which we will wipe. This is why it's important to tie closed a number of pollen producing flowers. You can see this one here is full of lovely pollen. It's a nice mature flower, whereas this side isn't mature at all and has basically no pollen on it. This one won't fertilise a fruit producing flower, this one will. So we don't pick the fruit producing flower, otherwise we don't have any fruit. So now we're going to untie the fruit producing flower, being really careful not to snap it or break it in any way, because we need to tie it back up and shut again. And you see that bit in there, the stigma? We're now going to take the pollen producing flower and tickle it all over and rub as much pollen on it as possible. You can do this with multiple pollen producing flowers to get as much pollen as possible all over. So now that we've hand pollinated our fruiting flower, we're going to tie it back up so no other bugs can get in and pollinate it with any different pollens. And we're going to label it with something like this. We use a red label that's seed saving on it so that we can mark our fruit knowing that is the one that we want to leave to maturity. So we're going to leave it on the vine now until it's fully mature, and we're going to come back in a few months and save the seed from it.